Climate change is real and inevitable. The annual global temperature is about 1 degree Celsius higher than in pre-industrial years. If we, as a society, keep on living and consuming like this, the world will cross 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030. If we take a closer look at the development of carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere over the last 420 years, the amount of greenhouse gases has never been that high before. Unfortunately, the massive production of meat and dairy products is one of the biggest contributors when it comes to releasing vast volumes of greenhouse gases. Through the deforestation to grow crops for the supply chain, gases that previously have been stored in the soil are released. Also, the transport for water and feed, as well as the energy to upkeep the facilities, take up a big part. But not only carbon dioxide is the problem. 37% of the world's methane emissions are caused by mass factory farming. Mentionable are the severe inhuman conditions in which livestock is held. This raises the question whether it would be better if more people waived consuming meat and dairy products. Therefore, I'm going to conduct a self-experiment. I'm trying to live vegan for 1 week and see if veganism is something for me. I interviewed some students and staff at Boston College about veganism. This is what they had to say.
People with a deep understanding of food and ethical values in life.
Mostly just very radical people who start hate other people who eat meat, and also the actual diet, which I got nothing against.
Doesn't sound like a big issue, really.
Hippies.
Okay, and why?
Because that's just the general sort of... Yeah, that's the first thing that springs to mind is people in flowery dresses and yeah,
okay.
You know, make love not war. That's my generation, I guess.
So this was the first time that I cooked porridge. I added some apples. It got a bit watery for the first time, but if I add some more ingredients, it could get better. We'll see. According to the Vegan Society, veganism is a way of living which seeks to exclude as far as is possible and practical all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing or any other purpose. Currently, we have about 1.6 million vegetarians and vegans in the UK. But why do people choose to be vegan?
So I had always felt a little uncomfortable about calling myself an animal lover and then eating meat. It always seemed a bit kind of counterintuitive, having pets and saying that I loved animals and then eating meat. About 5 years ago, I found out I was lactose intolerant, so I had to cut all dairy out of my diet. And then, just coming up for 2 years ago now, I made the decision to cut everything out and go vegan.
Oh, speaking of the dairy production, cows are held in small pens. The space is too small, and due to this disproportion, they often have grazes they should not have. Because of the fact that cows only produce milk caused by pregnancy, they are artificially impregnated. Within 48 hours, the newborn calf will be taken away from them. When the calf is taken away from the mother, the cow will be in panic of the loss of its newborn. What applies to the meat production is not very different to the dairy production. The cattle is not let outside and is held in small dark sheds. This is called zero grazing system. Oh, and the average lifespan of cattle is about 18 months until they are brought to the slaughterhouse. Not a long life, to be honest. A survey revealed that out of about 1,000 non-meat eaters, over 50% stated that they don't eat meat anymore because of animal welfare. I also asked Glenn about his first days on a vegan diet.
I decided to go vegan when I had my end of university show, so my photography exhibition. And we rented a space in the Truman Brewery in London. So we were very close to Shoreditch, where there's lots of fantastic vegan and vegetarian restaurants. So my first sort of 3 weeks to a month of being vegan, I was surrounded by some of the best vegan restaurants in the country. So it wasn't really that difficult. I then kind of, after that first month, had to start, okay, well, if I can have someone else cook it for me, why can't I do it myself? That's when the learning really started for me, because I'd eaten like a king for a month and then came home and had to teach myself to cook almost.
I had a conversation with nutrition expert Elizabeth Hunter. She gave me some useful tips on how to plan a healthy vegan diet.
So in my experience, For to become a vegan, I believe the safest way to do it is to transition into it. So if you're a meat eater or a fish eater, wean yourself off of those products. You can go cold turkey, and many people do, but just in my experience, I've noticed that because what happens is when you go into veganism, you actually eat a lot of all the plant-based foods, and you actually get in touch with a lot of emotions and feelings that you may not have experienced before, and your body will change and transform. So to be able to kind of deal with all of that, if it's more of a slow, gradual descent into veganism, you can cope better, and it actually becomes more of a permanent lifestyle change rather than just a kind of an ad hoc diet. So, I'm just going to do this for a few months. But if somebody's very serious about it, my advice is that you transition into it rather than going cold turkey.
At our college, I eat at the canteen during the day. But if you have a look at the counter, there are not many vegan alternatives.
Oh yeah, we have got some vegan food, but they do a bit in the day. But obviously, if we like to know if there's vegans, then obviously we'll put vegan food out every night if we knew that there was vegans going to be in. And vegetarians, we always do a vegetarian meal each night.
Today, I cooked chili sin carne with two friends of mine. We used tofu as a meat substitute. Here's what we said about chili sin carne.
Well, to be honest, I think it's not that different to normal chili con carne, so I don't really know what to say. I mean, you don't have that intense meat taste, but it's still good, and I think we probably didn't need that to buy the tofu. But yeah, tastes pretty good.
That's quite nice. I really like it. I'm not really often preparing something vegan or in that way, but I really enjoy the taste. Also because it's with tofu, for me that's kind of exotic because I'm not really using it. But I think I'll do that more often from now on because it's not such a aggressive taste like meat, so you can more focus on the vegetables. I quite like it.
This meal doesn't really miss out that much of the original taste of chili con carne, but speaking of tofu, it's a bit softer than real meat, so that was a bit odd in the first place, but I really like the taste, so I would recommend chili sin carne vegan edition. When you're searching for veganism on social media platforms, you always find a lot of people presenting their new food creations.
In my diet, a lot of things like fatty acids are found in a lot of nuts and peas. Iron, my iron levels are always really high because I eat a lot of dark green vegetables, so stuff like spinach, kale, lots of kind of leafy green vegetables give you lots of iron. Calcium as well, you get a lot of calcium from dark green vegetables. I think there's this idea that meat's the only place that you can get a lot of these minerals and kind of things. Most of those minerals come from the vegetables that the animal ate to start with. So really you're just cutting out the middleman. Things like iron, the vast majority of the iron that something like a cow would have in its system would come from its naturally green diet, kind of grains and grass. So you're getting a similar sort of iron intake.
But on the other hand, there are chat forums in which people create long posts against veganism. I asked Glenn what he thinks about the negativity towards veganism.
I think it's become really easy to make jokes out of vegans. A bit like people make jokes out of millennials and kind of hipsters, and there'll always be little pockets of society that are easy to kind of poke fun at. So I think there's a little bit of ridicule, but I think part of that possibly comes from guilt as well. People probably know that for the environment and for their own health, maybe they shouldn't be eating as much meat, but if someone else is kind of doing it right and you're doing it wrong, maybe it's easy to make yourself feel better by making jokes out of it. I think it's a bit of a kind of, it's easier to poke fun than it is to accept that maybe we should all be cutting down our intake of things like meat.
Half of the project is over now, 3.5 more days to go, and so far it's been a quite interesting experience. Although it had some limitations. For example, when you go shopping, you really need to watch out for the ingredients you buy. That can get quite annoying, and I discovered some lack of motivation. I hope that it will get better during the next days.
So one of the things that you can do is, because obviously when you feel those days where you just think, I just can't do this, what's happening is your body's actually transitioning, and it knows what you're doing, and it's like, you have taken things away from me, and it knows that you're changing everything, so it gets really grumpy, and just kind of like imagine like a grumpy old man inside of me, like, no. And sometimes you just have to say to that grumpy part of you, no. And almost like a child, like, no, we are moving, we are changing, and just kind of keep going. And another little tip is that you can do something that we call fake it till you make it. You almost have to tell yourself lies. So when it's really difficult, you have to just say to yourself, no, this is really easy. This is so easy. And just keep saying it to yourself over and over and over again. And one day it will be easy.
There's been a few occasions when we've kind of gone out for meals, and there's been kind of like carvery, kind of roast dinners, and I kind of think, oh, that would be really, I really miss kind of, there's something about the traditional English roast dinner that I quite miss. But then it passes really quickly. And I think at this point, I would probably regret kind of giving up now more than I would enjoy any meal.
This was my experiment, living 1 week vegan. It was a new experience for me because it was the first time that I waived meat and dairy products at the same time. So if a person walked up to me and said, Lennart, would you recommend living vegan? I would say, in the first place, please research more about veganism and how to establish a healthy vegan diet. You can also contact an expert like I did, a nutritionist for example, and plan your way into veganism. Do it more like a transition and don't go for the cold turkey. That is not recommendable. What I take out of this experience is that I don't want to continue living vegan, but at least cut down my meat and my dairy consumption.